So you think you want to study economics? Well, let's do a quick activity together and you can see what a normal economics lesson will be like. In economics, everything is about abstract theory, diagrams and models, hypothetical situations to help us explain the real world. So I'm going to begin here by drawing a set of axes. This is going to help us now build a model to understand what's happening in the apple market. When I say apples, I don't mean iPads and iPhones. I mean the fruit, green, red, golden delicious apples that you'd normally find in the supermarket. Now I better give these axes some labels. So on the x-axis, what's known as the independent variable, I'm going to put number of apples sold. Now if you want to give yourself a time period, think about it in terms of a day, a week, a month, whatever it might be. On the y-axis then, I'm going to put price, the price of an apple. Now what I want you to think of very quickly in your head, what is the normal price of an apple these days? If I walk into Tesco's today, what's the normal price of an apple? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Right, you should have said something, I imagine, like 20 or 30p, depending on where you shop. Maybe if you're a Waitrose, it's a little bit higher. But let's put something like 30p in here. That gives us a reference point. Now I'm going to give you two extreme examples, and I know they're extreme, yeah? I'm going to put apples, £30. That's a lot for an apple. Down here, I'm going to think 3p for an apple. That's not a lot for an apple. That's basically free. Okay, your job now is to, in your head at least, take the pen and draw me a line on this graph that represents the relationship between the price of apples and the number of apples that will be bought and sold in a supermarket on every given day. Now, I'll give you one clue before you start this, okay? Don't think about the apples in terms of 3p apples. That's got to be some bruised, heavily diseased, worm-ridden apple. It's not. And neither is the £30 apple some golden apple that solves cancer. Okay, these are just different prices of the same apple. You walk into Tesco's one day, apples are £30, the next day 30p, the next day 3p. The apple is the same quality, hasn't changed. But what you need to do is draw a line which represents the relationship between the price of apples if they were £30, if they were 30p, if they were 3p, and how many of them would be bought and sold. Draw the line. Right, what I hope you would have thought of then is, well look, if apples are at £30, almost nobody is going to buy them. So we're going to put a line down somewhere here, read it up to a coordinate point here, and say, well, maybe some people is, maybe some really rich person or somebody who really likes apples, but it's not going to be many. It's going to be close to zero. That's why we're quite close to the y-axis down here. By contrast, if apples are 3p, that's basically nothing. They're almost giving apples away for free. Nobody would be buying bananas, nobody would be buying oranges, everybody's buying the apples. So down here then, we're going to put a coordinate point there to simulate that at 3p, loads and loads of people are buying apples. And then the 30p one is probably somewhere in the middle, right? They're not dead cheap, they're not dead expensive, they're kind of normally priced, and therefore we'd assume some sort of normal number of apples that are being sold on a daily basis. So I'm going to put a point here to reflect that, and if I join the lines up, we get a downward sloping line. Sometimes you might call that a negative correlation. As one variable moves downwards, the other variable moves upwards. Or by contrast, as one variable moves upwards, the other one moves downwards. Doesn't really matter. Basically, you have a downward sloping line looking from left to right, and we could put a big D there and call that our demand curve. Woohoo! That's Economics Week 2 done in about 5 minutes. Now, very simple concept, but it actually allows us to do some fairly interesting things. So, for example, if I'm the CEO of Tesco's, I know that if I sell apples at 30p, I look off the graph, hey, look at that. I can sell 10,000 apples. That then means if I'm selling 30p apples, 10,000 units, I also know then that I'm making 3,000 300,000 p per day or per week or whatever the time period it is you settled on. Of course, we don't really normally deal in hundreds of thousands of pence, so we can put our decimal point here, and we can say, actually, we know that the CEO of Tesco's knows that if he sells apples at 30p, he'll sell 10,000 of them, and he'll make £3,000 revenue on that given time period. Right, that seemed pretty easy. So let's change the scenario a little bit. I want you again to imagine another hypothetical situation now, in which a very high profile band is marketing apples. Okay, now normally I get you to decide what the band is, but given the fact that I can't see you, you're only looking at me, I'm going to choose Ed Sheeran. Okay, I'm going to choose Ed Sheeran. So let's say Ed Sheeran is hired to market apples, and for the next 2 weeks, every time you walk around Headington, every bus stop you pass, it's Ed Sheeran holding an apple. Every time you turn on the television, Ed Sheeran is singing about apples. Same every time you turn on the radio, he's there singing his apple song. Now, I want you to think about the situation now after 2 weeks of this heavy Ed Sheeran Apple marketing campaign. Again, take a pen, draw me a line on this diagram that represents the relationship between the price of apples, the number of apples sold after 2 weeks of heavy marketing campaign. So what I hope you might have said was that after 2 weeks of heavy marketing, people are now a bit more willing to buy apples, yeah? And they're probably prepared to pay a little bit more for them as well. So we go back to the scenario. If apples are £30, again, probably not many people are prepared to buy them, but presumably more people than were buying them before. So therefore we can move our little dot a little bit further to the right. There we go. Again, if apples are 3p, then you might say that a lot of people are buying apples. But you might also say that a lot of people were buying apples before. So actually, maybe we don't move this too far. I'm going to move it to here. Given that I haven't put a scale on this, really, it doesn't matter as long as you agree with me that this coordinate point here has moved to the right. The number of apples bought and sold has increased now that we've done 2 weeks of heavy marketing. Again, going back to the middle, this normal price for apples that we're happy with, or this typical price rather, again, you should be saying, or I would hope that you said that more people are likely to buy 30p apples than they were before. So here's my coordinate point, and actually we can draw another straight line here. Hey, look, the demand curve has moved. In economics, we would say demand for apples has increased. People are now more willing and able to buy apples. We could now call that first line D1, demand 1, this new line D2 for demand 2. And this shows us that the demand for apples has increased. We could do the same thing with our revenue for apples, and we can see suddenly that instead of the CEO of Tesco's knowing that he could sell 10,000 units, he can now sell 15,000 units of apples, which means what's happened to his revenue? I'll let you calculate that. Good. I hope you said that revenue has now gone up to £4,500. Okay, so actually this is a 50% increase in revenue as a result of the marketing campaign. Brilliant. So was this a good marketing campaign? On the one hand, yeah, it's increased the revenue by 50%. In terms of raw numbers, it's gone up by 1,500. That's an increase in revenue that Tesco's is bringing in. Perhaps on the other hand, though, it depends on how much Ed Sheeran cost to market apples for 2 weeks. If it cost £1 million, then you've just lost 998 and whatever it is. Okay? Anyway, look. This is an activity just to show you what economics is like. How did you enjoy it? Was it fun? if you kind of enjoyed this stuff, if you were able to plot the lines and shift the lines on the graph,